Hi guys.
And welcome to Terminal Velocity. Today we're going to be talking about Zelda vs. 11, Oracle of Ages versus A Link Between Worlds.
The first category we have is creativity. And while both of these games are very creative, which is true for almost every Zelda game, I think between these two, just due to the fact that A Link Between Worlds takes a lot from A Link to the Past, I'm gonna have to say that Oracle of Ages has a little bit more creativity. The next category we have is combat. And just because Oracle of Ages is a significantly older game, doesn't necessarily mean that it has a disadvantage in this category. Although in this case, it does really seem to not be on par with A Link Between Worlds in terms of different ways of attacking. The next category we have is exploration. And while both of these games actually have very large worlds, due to the fact that A Link Between Worlds, its world, is very, very similar to The Link to the Past, I'm going to have to give this point to Oracle of Ages, because it has a completely new, unique world. The next category we have is items. And while both of these games actually have great lineups for items, just considering A Link Between Worlds' cutting edge item renting system, I'm gonna have to give it the point in this category. The next category is enemies. And once again, while both of these games do have fairly good enemies, Link Between Worlds, just due to the fact that it's newer and it had some base to go on, it has a little bit better enemies in general. So I'm gonna have to give it the point in this category as well. The next category we have is dungeons. And while Oracle of Ages dungeons they're respectable, they aren't bad. They're good for Zelda standards. They're nowhere near as good as A Link Between Worlds, which has some of the best 2D dungeons. The next category is characters. And while you might think A Link Between Worlds would be a lot better in this category, considering Ravio, and Hilda. And while it is definitely better in terms of characters, Oracle of Ages has Nayru and a few other great characters as well. The next category we have is story. And once again, Oracle of Ages story is really good. I would recommend it. You should go play that game right now if you haven't already. But A Link Between Worlds, its story is really, really excellent, and so it gets the point in this category as well. The next category is emotion, and while Oracle of Ages, it does have a few emotional moments that are really great, A Link Between Worlds has some of the best emotional moments in the series. So I'm going to have to give it the point in this category again. The next category we have is progression. And while both of these games have fairly good progression, Oracle of Ages, considering the fact that it isn't as open world and more linear, actually has much better progression than A Link Between Worlds. The next category is side content. And this match isn't even really close at all. Oracle of Ages doesn't really have very much side content, and A Link Between Worlds has quite a bit. Not as much as a couple other games, but it is one of the most in Zelda. So I'm gonna have to give the point to A Link Between Worlds. The next category is music. And although A Link Between Worlds has a lot of songs that are kind of just reorchestrations of songs from A Link to the Past, It has a lot of original songs that are really great. And although Oracle of Ages does have a pretty good soundtrack, it's nowhere near as good as Link Between Worlds. The next category is bosses. And once again, this is a category where Oracle of Ages is pretty good in, but A Link Between Worlds just has really great bosses that really implement the 3D, 2D style really well, and they feel really immersive. So I'm going to have to give the point once again to A Link Between Worlds. The next category is art style, and just basically due to the fact that Oracle of Ages is on the Game Boy Color, and it has basically the exact same art style as Link's Awakening DX. I'm going to have to give the point to A Link Between Worlds, because it has a very unique art style. The next category is world, and while A Link Between Worlds does have a very good world, it is almost the exact same as A Link to the Past. And even if I was comparing A Link to the Past and Oracle of Ages, I would have to say Oracle of Ages world has a little bit more stuff in it, and it's more compact, even though it is technically larger. The next category is difficulty, and once again, while A Link Between Worlds is more open, and it is more, you can kind of choose the way you do it, the difficulty is very, varying in that game, compared to Oracle of Ages, where it has a very good difficulty progression. So I'm going to have to give the point to Oracle of Ages. The next category is replay value. And as you might have noticed from this Zelda versus round, A Link Between Worlds is, in general, a little bit better game than Oracle of Ages, as well as being a little more fun to play. So I'm going to have to give the final point to A Link Between Worlds. So what do you think? Which of these two games do you like more? Be sure to tell me down in the comments below, and leave a like if you like this video. Also be sure to check out my other videos if you like this content, and I hope you have a great day. Bye guys, and thanks for watching Terminal Velocity.